I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Halifax Elementary School Committee at 6:01 p.m. And for everyone that's here, the meeting is being recorded. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone that's interested in speaking tonight? More visitors? Welcome. Okay. All right. So now we need to review and vote the regular minutes of August 28th. I did notice that I think there were some names on there in attendance, like left over, like Jim Keegan.
It was fixed.
Oh, what?
Yeah, we re-uploaded that.
You re-upload? Okay, that was the only thing I
So if
noticed.
you go back and you should see it also.
Oh, okay. I remember. What? Did you know? No. Does anyone have any? Did everyone have a chance to review them?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Karen, did you second that?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay.
And then our first agenda item, which is, wait for, is that Lori?
Lori.
Hey, Lori. All right, is having Halifax Elementary School goals, which we wouldn't need to necessarily codify tonight, but start a discussion of goals that we have as a committee for, I would say, the school year, you know, but and I would want our goals to align with the district goals and the school goals. And so you know, obviously, well, to me, the most important thing is, I would say, Halifax Elementary School being a high-quality place of learning where everyone feels welcome. And, I mean, if we were having, like, a mission statement of sorts, but I'm open to any feedback or thoughts on this.
So I was the person that asked if we could put this on the agenda after having attended the Charting the Course training for the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. I didn't even realize this was a thing that school committees do, and I found that training to be really informative. And in fact, they were giving out USB drives with all the information contained, so I have extra copies for anyone that would like one. But I thought it was a good idea, especially we're a relatively newer school committee. So it might make sense for us to have kind of like a guiding vision, some goals that help support what the building principal and the school district have already in place. And I also learned that this can be kind of it doesn't have to be something you start the year with. It can be something that develops in the first couple of months of the year when you have some conversations around it. So I was hoping that we could discuss the topic among the board, thoughts about pros and cons, and maybe come back at a future meeting with some suggested goals that we could finalize if we decide to move forward with that. So.
I love the idea. I actually requested it from the two previous chairs. It never went anywhere, and then I just haven't gotten around to suggesting it again this time. I actually have some drafted someplace as well. So yes, I love the idea, and I'd love to bring it back, bring it forward to do that, bring it back and talk about it next time.
Is that something that you all want to kind of go and think about it and bring them back to the next meeting, or do you want to have more of a robust discussion right now, or how does that work? Is it just like that we can just discuss, or
you can discuss it in an open session. You could put together a subcommittee to meet and work on it and then bring it back to the larger committee. You could have people bring back their ideas next week and vote them in open session. But ultimately, whatever you decide will probably eventually be voted in open session. It's going to be an official guide.
Okay, I'm just more thinking of the best way to put it together. So, do you think the subcommittee route is a good way to go and then so we can have people working on it officially? Or do you want to just all of us, because you can't really, like, if we send ideas together, we can't do anything until we're in open session. Like, we have to, and I'm sort of thinking that the most efficient way is to maybe have a subcommittee, because then it can be discussed to people officially and brought to the group. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I like the subcommittee idea.
I do as well.
Okay, so would we have to do okay, so someone would have to make a motion to form a subcommittee, correct?
I think that's the safest way.
Okay,
I think you would probably want to have 3 people so that, and you would.
2 people and an alternate?
Mhm.
Okay.
Or 3 people that were there, if 2 people show up, you can still meet. It would need to be posted.
So you could have a subcommittee meeting where 3 people are on it, but it would have to just be posted? Or doesn't that become a quorum?
We generally post our subcommittee meetings.
Oh, you do?
What if we started with, we all came up with, like, we all leave this meeting, come up with our goals, all come back, what if we all have very similar goals, and then there's no need to have a subcommittee to even chat about it? Like, we could all have the same kind of idea, that we all, come back to the next meeting with our ideas of what we think that our school committee goals are, and if they're all aligned, then there's not really a point to have a whole subcommittee and a bunch of different meetings and post them and do all that. We just have
I can see that too, and I would like everyone to have, the only concern about the subcommittee is I want everybody to have input on it, but I also don't want to just like throw it on, let's do it tonight, you know?
Right, I think that we should leave and come back with ideas on it, now that this is fresh in our mind, now
Okay.
why it's on the agenda.
Okay, so can I make a request to add this, well, I'll just to add it to the next agenda as, to bring back any goals? Do we need to make a motion for that, or is that just?
No, you can just have it on the next agenda.
I would maybe like discussion and possible vote on the
Okay,
agenda.
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I think we all have access to, Kane, do you have, school goals you could share with us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the strategy for district improvement was included
Yeah, and
in
the
the last presentation.
Yeah. So we should have all of the information, but we know where to go if we, and can you send it to the whole school committee, please? Okay. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay. All right, then signing of warrants, we're doing that, or sort of?
Yeah, we are. Can I just mention that there are 13 warrants totaling $337,354.95. And I know a couple of you haven't had a chance to sign warrants before, is that true? So this is your first opportunity. Enjoy. If you have any questions, please let me know. They've all gone through our office, myself, the superintendent, so we'll see what it takes to make this place hum.
And,
So just before you move on to the next agenda, I just ask something.
sure.
So can the guests here, can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I just was wondering, going forward, if like those chairs can be moved up, because I feel like whenever people are in attendance, they can hardly hear us. And then the mic isn't in a new spot today, but I feel like when people try to watch, they also can't hear.
I did
very
hear
well.
complaints about.
So I didn't know if there's a reason why they have to be so far away. I didn't know when we set it up in the future, if we could let them move closer or not.
I'll see what I'm not.
So if you guys want to move chairs up, if you can't hear, you're welcome to do so.
Or if you just want to be in the back of the class, I mean. Nobody likes this in the front. Do we need, is there anything on the signals?
Yes,
Okay.
after our last meeting, so on September 6th, there were 12 warrants totaling $341,589.42 that were signed by Superintendent Crew as well as Jessica Page, thank you. The warrants were signed at the town hall and then they were processed for payment.
Thank you, thank you. All right, trying to sneak some in while we're, okay. We don't have any school committee correspondence or reports right now, so we can do a reporting and standing committees. Do you want to report on the policy?
I talked to Jill about that, so we did meet, but we will put it on the agenda next time to have a vote on the ones that we
Okay.
looked at changing.
All right, and then negotiations met, yeah, it's tomorrow, right?
Policy is basically just a bunch of, like, feeding words anyway.
Okay. And then Pilgrim Area Collaborative, I don't believe they've met, which, that's Darren. Anything?
I haven't heard anything. I don't know.
Do they reach out to her, or?
Do they have my contact?
I assume so. If you haven't heard from them, that's, please send an email to Karen
Okay.
Tringali, and we will make sure you'll contact.
Okay. Youth and rec?
So I met with Dick Steele, and he wanted to thank the school committee and the town and Halifax Elementary for splitting the cost of sanding and refinishing the gym floor this summer. He said that basketball will be up and running soon. After-school sports is up and running and doing fantastic. It's the flagship of the youth town and rec program. He is working with Mr. Beaudry and Mr. DeSantis on possibly recruiting teachers for a revitalized STEM club, possibly school newspaper, he said, and an arts club. So we have that to look forward to.
Okay, PTO Karen?
So they are back to in-person meetings with a new president. And the treasurer just talked again about field trips, just, the price of those keep going up, so that's always their biggest obstacle, is trying to make sure they can equally fund the field trips. Conversation started last year about funding per pupil rather than per class, because sometimes there's a huge differential between one class size and the next. So that was mostly from that, and then I'm sure a lot of this overlaps with Kane's update, but book fair's coming up, Turkey Trot's back for this year again. They actually have a calendar of events, which I have on my desk somewhere I'll find, which I thought was nice, that you're going to try to publish a calendar to hand out so that people know when all of their meetings are and all the events that are coming. When they met, they were trying to revive the Halloween party, and I think I saw an email that has been revived, and I think there's a Halloween party.
Going to that.
Okay.
It's exciting how folks want.
There were many guests there, I'd say maybe 6 to 8, which was, more than we've had lately. Lots of them asked about school committee and meetings and dates. And they expressed that they would have interest in having the notifications via PowerSchool, which I've also asked for before because it's hard to remember when they are, but they were interested, and I did share with them the date, but obviously,
Is there any reason we can't send it out in the PowerSchool, like as a reminder about school committee?
It's on our calendar on our Friday, no.
It's on your Friday note?
Yeah.
Do you send a separate one out for PTO?
I don't think so. I can check, but I think it's just a list of, on Friday's note, we just put like dates to remember.
Okay.
So we get PTO one.
Right, PTO.
I can check.
Is it something that PTO is sending out?
I'm pretty sure it's something like, but just to, again, I think all of us could agree that we really want, our parents or any community members to be here and involved, active participants. So I just think it'd be great to be able to, sometimes I can't find one meeting. So
Well, it is
you know what I mean? So anybody else trying to find that information, I'm sure would be, easier just to have it out there. I
Is
did
there
tell
any reason why we can't have you send out reminders about school committee to the community?
I don't think that I have. Usually, I mean, with the way it works with PTOs, usually they just send something to us and saying, hey, could you send out something from the PTO? And then they tell us what they want us to write, and then, or they draft it and they say, can we approve this? But it's like, just that there would be like the Halloween social thing that's coming up on the 20th.
Right, yeah, so like the previous president would send the agenda to the office and the office.
That's what they would send out.
And I just would like to have the same thing for us, to have our agendas sent through parents first, so people would be aware. But anyway, they also agreed, the PTO was like, oh wait, when are the meetings, where do we go? And you know, they would just wanted more information about it.
So yeah, we sent out an initial PTO one that had all the dates on it. We sent out PTO Halloween social, the fundraiser that they did at the open house that night.
So if I sent you the agenda to send out, would you?
I'm okay with that, right? That's,
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes we get parents who are inundated. It's a delicate balance, quite honestly. Some people will be thrilled, and other people will say, why are you doing it? Why are you sending more?
I'd say if they ask and complain about the school committee, which we could say contact the school committee and we'll talk to them. How's that?
Sounds good to
Talk to
us.
them.
we do send a PTO on that day. And it says like when, where.
Okay, well, I'll send you
Send it to me and Ellen.
agenda. You and Ellen?
And then we'll post it.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look through all of us, our shared email, you see Christina will send every month, sends it to Ellen and says, post it, can you please post this on Parent Square? And she posts every one of them on Parent Square.
Okay, so Christina and Ellen, all right.
Usually we'll get it like the day before or the day of, and then we'll post it by noon,
Okay,
and then it goes up to everybody.
okay.
If it was virtual, then there would be a link on there, but now I think they're all in person.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
And so the last thing for the TO is that I just told them that we were, I would give them our organizational chart because they just wanted to be more informed about who our members were and what we're responsible for. And then I asked the same for them, but I haven't gotten their share because they're also reorganizing. So I'll share that out.
Do they have all of their positions filled at this point?
Yeah, they do.
That's good.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, capital budget, I don't believe met. Admin review, Lori? Or
I'll take it and then I'll defer to Katie that
Okay.
we met. The date is foggy for me, to be honest with you. We did meet.
Thursday.
Yes, thank you. And we voted a new chair, which is Katie. We discussed that for the process last year, the group had voted to do a 2-year review, performance review cycle for Jill. And this is year 1, and next year would be the
Yeah, so
second
this is
year.
a formative review year.
Because we just did the review this past spring, so.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's the crux of it, and that she shared her goals with us, which looked very great and promising, and I'm excited to be part of it. So I think Katie will do a great job chairing, and we have a few folks that have been on the committee, the review group, for a year or so, and can provide some guidance for those of us who are new to this process.
Great, fantastic.
Did I get it? Thank you.
And then Union 31 met last Tuesday night, and we approved the hiring of our new director of financial services, which we will miss you a lot, Christine, but I'm sure you're excited. You're like beaming. You're just like gonna float out. Anyway, so, and what else did we talk about? That's it? Okay, I was like, were there any other meetings between, because I'm getting like the school, like, you know, other, okay. There's been a lot of meetings.
Yes.
There's been a lot, yeah. No, like, I know we're going tomorrow too, okay.
We do.
Yeah, anyway, it's fine, it's our job. All right, we'll turn the time over to Kane for his MCAS presentation.
Do you want me to do the MCAS now, or do you want me to?
Oh, do your, well, it says that,
Yeah.
whichever. Yeah.
I can do that. I have a quick blurb, if that's all right. Is that all right? Just so I know there's a lot to do there, but just quickly, the enrollment, there's 549 students. Then we have, we welcome our class of 2036 for kindergarten. And actually, it really turned out to be a great opening for that group. That group right now is at 90, it's bigger than we were expecting. And we had 3 new teachers in that grade level, so they did a really nice job kind of kicking off the year. Open house we had on the 7th, it was great, it was super hot in here. If you decided to come by, teachers were sweating, students were sweating, it was parents came out, but it was a wonderful night, so thanks for everyone for coming out. That was also the night that PTO sponsored the ice cream that was in the cafeteria. That was also a nice little treat. Booster-thon that we had for 2023 raised over $30,000. Another great event. We had the fun run that was on Friday, I think it was the 22nd. The weather was beautiful, and we had a wonderful experience there. Then we have, just kind of mentioning our Halifax heroes, and that's kind of our monthly recognition where it's aligned with our second step curriculum. We have our Halifax hero over there in the corner who's hiding, but Mr. DeSantis, he does a nice job helping us out and recognizing all the good work that staff and students are doing throughout the building. And October is Bullying Prevention Month, and that's where we're doing classroom lessons focusing on teaching students to recognize, report, and refuse bullying. So if you hear your students coming home with conversations about bullying and things like that, that's what our lessons are focusing on in the classroom. And down the bottom, there's just some bunch of dates there in October. A lot of them are the PTO dates. There's PJ Hat Day that's coming up. That's as a result of the funds that they met their goal during BoosterCon. So every first of the month is PJ Hat Day. We have Columbus Day on the 9th. The 11th is the PTO meeting at 6 p.m. and that's in person. 13th is Friday. That's the PTO all for books PJ Day. Then the 20th is Friday, that's the Halloween Social that's back in business. And on the 24th, we've got Retake for Light Touch, and that's also the start of the Scholastic Book Fair that PTO runs. And then on the 26th of that, we have fall conferences, 12:30 release. Look at that fast, wow. All right, if I turn the MCAS.
I just have a question first. Is the school council formed this year?
Yep, so I need 2 new members. So we're looking for teachers because the 2 teachers that were on last year, they are not joining it this year, so I'm waiting to get 2 for this year. So we'll most likely have a meeting in October, but once I get the members, then we'll have that out there. And then I can share out the survey results from springtime, and then make sure the draft of the strategy for district improvement or school improvement that we started last year. Hopefully I can get people on that. Anything else?
So you're only waiting for teachers?
Yeah. So the 2 parents that were on last year, they, as far as I know, they agreed to stay on it for this year.
How often are you supposed to hold elections for the school council?
I have to double check. I don't think there is actually a timeline on it, but I don't.
So you're not really sure if those 2 parents, you haven't like spoke with them confirmed?
When I talked with them at the end of last year, they said that they were interested in continuing this year. But I can look up for you and see how long the term is, but it's usually when there are parents that are interested. It's kind of a hard group to corral to get on. Sometimes it's.
Well, I mean, other schools, they like put out a notice, right, that we're looking for people, and I mean, are you supposed to have a community member as well?
Yep, so Officer McIntyre's on there.
Okay.
She's been our one person, but usually it's looking for a community member to jump on. Sometimes we ask police and fire because they're the most convenient people there. But yeah, so this year we just need 2 new staff members that will be on.
Could school committee member be a community member, or is that like interference there?
I'd have to look it up because you used to be on it,
Yeah, but,
right? And
well,
you were-
I think it just kind of makes sense for there to be sort of a bridge between the school council and school committee, you know? Almost like we have, you know, our liaisons to the PTO and to the children memory, collaborative, all those, like why not have one for school council? So I just thought maybe that was something that we could think about adding. So we have a bridge there as well.
Can I ask just a question around like parent elections? So in previous life, when I was on the PTO at the middle school, the PTO was actually charged with holding the elections for school council. And the principal kind of, Katie's well aware, the principal deferred that to us and said this isn't something that we handle, organize, whatever, and we asked that the PTO do that. We always did it. We solicited nominations, they'd mail them to us, so we'd have a ballot where people could write in their name. And again, it was regional, so there was a certain number of years that you could sit on that council, you know, a certain number of members that were needed, and from each town. And I'm blanking on the exact requirements, but I remember it was a much more formal process. And during open house night, we would hold an election where parents would come, we'd be selling our merch to raise money, but we'd also have, you know, a voting area for them to cast a ballot. So I don't know if that's because it's a regional district, a middle school, if it has different criteria, but I just wonder if that's ever been a process in Halifax.
The 13 years I've been here, the PTO has never done it. But
Yeah,
they
so I
could
just
totally take it
wonder.
over.
Yeah, I just wonder why.
And you need to be careful because it is your responsibility. So again, by state regulation, and if you look at, I just sent you the link to DOE-mass.edu laws. May school committee members serve. A school committee member who is a parent of a student attending a school can run and be elected. The intent is to widen the base of citizen involvement. School committee members are already involved at the highest level of school governance and are not encouraged to serve on school councils. So again, there's a whole list of regulatory language that before we make promises tonight, I think that the principal needs to review them and think about what makes the most sense moving forward.
Well, and I will say when they put out a request for people to serve at the high school, there was a great response. So I'm not sure that saying it's hard to get people on it is.
Well, I do know that the 2 people that are on it currently are the only 2 people that ran.
Okay, well,
So,
Hopefully now with new kindergarten students, we have some new parents to solicit, so to speak. So.
I mean, obviously I've been on school committee in my 2nd year, but I don't remember getting that, you know, interest letter or whatever, the interest notification. But the year I served on school council, I guess I did 2 years. I know I had to, it was an election, like, that was like 4 or 5 of us, and it's contentious.
no, I mean, I've had people reach out to me and say, will you vote for me for school council?
Yeah.
I definitely had that happen. Even last year on high school one, so.
And also under the term for school council members, the law is silent on this issue, leaving it up to the individual principals to make a determination in terms of how long the terms will be.
And then there's the question of if you can't get teachers to volunteer, what do you do then?
so look up the regs there.
I'd say we add this to another agenda, seeing as we have to go through this, and I'm just picking on Kane here, I feel like we should pull back and put it on the next agenda. I know, but it's not. I mean, we're putting on the spot here where we're all kind of asking questions that nobody knows the answer to, and it's all in Jill's computer right now. I think we should just
We're just trying to help get the school council up and running.
I know.
I don't think that's,
I can send you the regulation, in fact, I can send the entire school committee the regulatory language,
that'd be great. Thank you.
but don't respond to me.
So can I just add, piggybacking off that, I don't think anyone here is in a, we're all coming from a place of needing to understand, not necessarily attack. I think there's, amongst all of us, we're parents of many different ages of children, so we all bring to this table a different experience and different experiences in different schools. I know for me, I've now 3 in the district, so it's been a while since I've had a child here. I hate to say that, but I just feel like there's some level setting sometimes that we need to do, and I hope that's not coming across in a negative way. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
I didn't mean like picking on Kane. I think
Yeah.
we have all like what we need. The answers to what our questions are in an email that's going to be sent to us. So I think we revisit this one later too.
Fair.
So are we putting it on the agenda for next, is that what you said?
Yeah, we can put it on the agenda
I think
for
that was Jessica's suggestion.
Okay. MCAS presentation?
Yeah.
Are those or what do you do?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
You need to refresh it though. Just go out and back in. Please, there's one slide needed updating. Yeah, just go back in.
You want to check what's live? All right.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. So here's our 2023 MCAS presentation that Ryan and I tagged in on. So here's the, you want to do this one? No?
I can just do the overview. Kane and I, Dr. Group participated in the statewide summary, so this is just like one slide about results statewide. Obviously, they vary by community, by content area, but essentially, this is just one slide we wanted to give you as an overview of what the results show. Like the first bullet says, recovery is underway. Obviously, everybody would like achievement and growth to return to 2019 levels. It's not happening as swiftly as all stakeholders who care would want it to. But you'll see slight improvement statewide in some of the lower elementary ELA grades like 3rd and 4th. Slightly larger gains in math in those lower elementary grades. Science was a little bit, the term there is relatively unchanged, so it's a little bit flatter there. And obviously, we want to make sure that our students who are in the lower elementary grades and are learning to read are able to do that, so the state asks us to really keep an eye on it, as well as the big caution at the bottom, which is a lot of this really depends on the district that you're in. So that was just the general overview from the state, and you'll see when Kane presents in grades, so MCAS is given in grades 3 through 6 in math, in ELA, and there's a science one in 5th grade. Prior to each local share of the data, there's just a statewide number, so you have a sense of that number. So that's a little bit about how it's organized.
This here is just the state results for English language arts. It just kind of breaks it down by grade level and then each percentage area. And then down here, this is how it compares to 2022 and to 2019. You see that there's increases as compared to 2022, pretty much across the grade level percentage points. Then here, this is here's a snapshot of the entire school. So this is our students at each grade level. So on the left there, you see the subject areas starting in grade 3, and then it compares us, the first column is the school, and then it compares it to the state, and then it breaks it down into each column there. So you can see there, the first column, we're typically 54% of students, Halifax students, are meeting or exceeding. That's this line down here, and it combines all of these grades there. And then 49% of students in 3 through 6 for math down there. And then science is at 48. Over on this end, it kind of just tells you like how many students there are, participation rate, average SGP, if there's a comparison. They typically look for between 40 and 60 is typical growth, which is kind of where most of our grade levels are landing in. Obviously, anything on the higher end of that is where we want people to be. But that's just kind of a snapshot of every grade level. What we did here is just, these are year-to-year comparisons. I know it's kind of a lot, so this is grade 6 is in the top corner, grade 5, grade 4, and grade 3, and it just kind of shows for the last 4 years where each of our students are performing at each level. Really dug into the numbers, you could kind of like follow the cohort and see how they did from year to year, but we thought this was a good data piece that we could compare. You can see how grade levels are performing year to year.
Do you have data that follows a cohort as opposed to like this is grade 3 the last 4 years and grade 5, 4, right? This is like the actual, everyone in 3rd grade in 2019, 2021. So do you have the data that you could share of like following the grades to kind of see how each grade, because I think...
I don't have it here tonight, but I do have it because Brian and I actually like to follow the grade level. So you can see like this group here in 2023, they had 57%. So this particular group, if you see what they did in 2022, it was 69%. So then in 2021, they were 59, and then 2020, yeah. So they weren't there.
Because like I'm curious about like kids who are in kindergarten in 2020 who then are in 3rd grade taking it for the first time. Like I wonder what they do. And then like 3rd graders who didn't have it for the first time who are now 6th graders, 7th, right? Okay. Anyway, it was just to have it so it's like, you know, you're also following the actual students to kind of see how...
Do a better class, like
Yeah.
20 grades that just started.
Exactly. Just because, I mean, this is good data, but I feel like knowing how kids are actually doing is to follow the actual grade, which I know you can on this chart, it's just not easy to.
Right. Brian, I like to do it that way, but it's, I mean, like even when the way the state publishes it, like they're not comparing us to, you know, that same group of students, they're comparing us with different students, so.
No, I understand.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It does help you kind of see where those students are going. But yeah, on this you can kind of follow it, but we can absolutely do that.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
One positive thing that I wanted to point out is that we have basically 100% participation, which is amazing.
That is good.
Kate, do you have any like ideas for like just to pick like the grade 5 ELA one? Like that's remarkable that there was only 2 exceeding expectations in 2019 pre-pandemic, because we're just talking about getting back, right?
Yeah.
That was only like we're not there yet, but whoa, like there was only 2 and then to 22, and those class sizes, I did the quick math in my head, it looks like the class sizes were about the same because these aren't percentages, right? These are numbers, correct?
No, these are percentages.
Oh, these are all percentages?
Yes.
Okay, but you still, okay, so even more so then I didn't have to do the math on that then.
Right.
I figured it was my kids' 2 grades, I couldn't really, because they were all both about 100, but, so 2 pre-pandemic, 2%, and then up to 22% the year after was the, I didn't think, they didn't change MCAS, right? They didn't try to give us any papers, right? That was still just as rigorous as before.
Sorry, you
In
were.
21,
I don't know.
I think 20.
It was half the test.
Yeah.
It was? Oh, okay, so do you think maybe that was the situation? I mean, I'm just looking at that and shocked by that,
Well,
Who's
most
that?
of it,
Who's that?
90%
we're concerned about gaps and instead we're seeing like.
That's part of the difficulty in comparison, in comparing the years, because 21 was a different kind of test. And so even the state will warn you against making,
It's not apples to apples.
right.
So the tests aren't similar year?
They're similar, but they're
Not
not
that
the same. And in that year, it was half the test.
Okay, yeah, that, I mean, that's significant. Then even 2022 is still 19%. And then there's a huge drop the next year. Was 2022 a half test too, do you know? Or back to normal?
So there was no MCAS in 2020 because of the statewide shutdown, and then in 21, it was essentially half of the test, half as long, half as many sections, so like the superintendent talked about, there's not a lot of reliability in the 21 results. It says something, but like if your kid took it, it's worth going over with your child, but when you spread that across the way that the data is analyzed in the other categories, it's not as reliable generally, but
So
that was
can
the only test that was significantly different.
Can I ask a question? So if I'm following this, trying to follow it by class, and using that grade 5 example for 2019 of 2%, we can't see their next MCAS results because that would be at the middle school level. They wouldn't, there's nothing for their 6th grade experience because there were no MCAS that year, right? Okay. So then technically, right, if we look at 5th grade 2021, that's a half year's test or a half test. So a more normal year to follow would be 2022, which would have been a full year, 19%. And then those kids in 2023 actually dropped at 6th grade to 14%. Am I
Yes.
following the track?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then, yeah, I mean, I think it's here at a local level helpful to see grade to grade, but this is very complicated. Like, you really got to dig in the weeds to understand what you're looking at here to make a judgment on all the variables and how that's impacting the numbers. So thank you for explaining.
I just want to point out, we're looking at the blue one, which is exceeding the expectations.
Yeah.
We really should be combining exceeding and meeting, because that's our goal, is for the students to meet the expectation. So we really should be combining those two numbers to get an accurate idea of where our students are. Fair point.
And that's kind of how we do it when we're always combining those two, with meeting or exceeding in that first column there. So when we're communicating that, that's how we do it. Our work with our consultant, a lot of times they like to see how it's spelled out in each of the scoring areas. Because sometimes when we're seeing a large number for not meeting, we have to kind of look at what students we can move to that next grouping. So we try and see how we can look at all the numbers and do what we can for all students. So this is statewide for math. Here again, similar to the ELA one, it shows the grade levels down the side, the 23 performance. Meeting or exceeding, it's roughly 41, 45, 41%, kind of in the low 40s there, but it's actually, there's increases. There wasn't an increase in grade 3, but there was in grade 4 and 5, and then a slight increase in grade 6, and then some of the other ones down there. Again, back to the one that we're doing here. This kind of shows our math comparisons by grade level. So you can see, I actually go back, comparing it to this one here. So our math numbers were, actually they were flat for the most part. But you can see our 3rd grade was at 50%, and we're 9 over the state. 4th grade was at 48%, 3 over the state, and 5th grade was at 51, 10 over the state, and then our grade 6 was at 47, which was 6 over the state. Again, we compare to the state in this format, but what we like to do is we like to look at DART scores. The DART scores haven't been released yet, But the DART scores compare us to, I believe, 10 or 11 like districts. And as soon as those numbers are out, you'll kind of see that we actually are much higher on the list compared to our DART towns. But the ones that are in there are the 22 scores, but you can see that in both ELA, math, and science, that our numbers are definitely trending at the top of that DART score. So we're waiting for DART to come out this year. Hopefully it will be similar to what we've seen in the past. So again, just wanted to point out, you can get into this, but the participation rate is pretty high. But overall, our math scores were relatively flat compared to last year as a whole. This is statewide science. Here, just in grade 5, meeting or exceeding at 42% for the state. That is actually a drop from 1% in 2022. For science, for us, this is our trend as we were sharing. So we had a noticeable drop from last year's grouping, where in 2022 we had 69%, and whereas we dropped to 14% for this year. But that might be similar to our trend the years before. We were at 45 in 2019, and in 2021 we were at 50. So we were a great year in 2022, but then we dropped a little in 2023. Stop me if I'm going too fast or other questions out. This slide just talks a bit about the SGP, which is the growth, and here it gives kind of ranges for each of them. Like I mentioned earlier, the typical growth is between 40 and 59. Obviously, we'd like to be in that range or even higher. That's kind of the language that we share with our staff, making sure that that's kind of in the range, but anything on the higher end is where we always encourage our staff to be at. This one shows where our growth is in ELA. So the green dot is where Halifax is. So we're typical growth for school-wide at 47, but we have a higher achievement compared to the state, where we're at 54 and the state's at 42% for meeting and exceeding. And then for math, again, with a green dot in math, so again, we're showing typical growth, which is at 48. It's within that range. Obviously, we'd like to get it closer up to 60 as much as possible. And here, our achievement is higher again at 49% meeting or exceeding versus the state, which is at 41. And then see what we have as next steps. Our SST team, we're always trying to, fine-tune that the supports that we have for students and for staff. So when we identify students, then it's a process where we're carefully identifying students, and then we're putting things in place so that we're progress monitoring those students, so that we are identifying them and moving the needle as best we can. And that support team is, made up of myself and Brian, and then we have our special education department members of special ed. We have our reading and math people. And then when a staff member brings a student up to be considered for SST, then we kind of put our heads together and kind of figure out what we can do to assist with students and making the interventions work for that to move it.
Do you inform parents when?
Yes.
Okay.
So when students come up, the classroom teachers will usually be like, I'm having some concerns with Kane. I'd like to bring Kane up to the SST team. I'll let you know after that meeting, like what comes out of it. And usually what it is we have district accommodation plans where we put it in place and say this is kind of what we're doing for 6 to 8 weeks, and we're going to progress monitor, and these are the people that are responsible. And then hopefully we're moving that needle and getting the student to where they're supposed to be, but if not, then we kind of bring the team back to the table and we kind of assess like which interventions and strategies work and which ones did.
How many students would you say roughly are involved in the SST program? Time?
Well, on a year, like a yearly basis, teachers can put students in for SST at any time.
Well, if it's like 6 to 8 weeks, it seems like you could cycle through quite a few students.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of wondering, like, I don't know if the best way to answer it is percentage-wise, like how many students in a classroom might have the SST intervention, or I don't.
So, and we kind of like track, like, we just have like a running, like, spreadsheet of students and what's the interventions that are being in place, but like on a yearly basis, it's probably, Ryan, I don't speak of it, between 25 and 30, is my guess.
Like over the whole year?
Over the course of the year, spread throughout K to 6. A lot of times we'll see students
What
in
percent?
Kids.
K to 3 are the one, but the K to 3 are the ones that we oftentimes are trying to identify, because we've already, by grades 3 through 6, we've already identified, hopefully, for the most part.
So are they, I mean, I know it's not like an IEP or anything, but it's an informal process, it kind of sounds like, so, trying to think of what my question is. Who provides the services?
On the SST team, what we do is we decide some are from the classroom teacher, some might be from Title I, or the reading teacher, or our math interventionist. And those are the steps that we would put in prior to any kind of special education testing. And if we've attempted those and we're not successful, then kind of bring it back to the table, and then we consider, should we go in the direction of, a formal evaluation.
Okay, and the parents are involved in the whole process?
Yep.
Okay, and like monitoring like your measurement of how they're progressing as well? Like,
Yep.
do you keep records of that? Like, it's, I'm sorry, I've just never heard of this before, so I'm just curious about it. Like, any help is great, I'm just, trying to understand it. 'Cause there's
Yep.
certainly a step between, you want as much help as you can get for kids, but I wonder, like, it's another thing for teachers too,
Right, and that's what we want. We want to make sure our teachers have the support, because they're like, we're struggling with this particular student. What I've tried A, B, and C. Is there someone else that can help me figure out what's going on with the student? And then we sit down and kind of brainstorm. What have we tried? What have we not tried? And then we kind of say like, all right, let's try this for this long, or try A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z. So then we put it in place, and then we assign people to make sure they're following through with it. And then we reconvene the SSC team.
How do you make sure people follow through? Just because, like, I know on an IEP it's very specified, of like when the service is going to be given, like there's a very definitive schedule. Do you have something like
So
that?
in the meeting, and then a lot of times we'll come out of those as a decap, and then we kind of talk and type in the meeting. We'll be like, all right, this student is struggling with reading comprehension in third grade. They need a little extra dose, and so then we, usually we typically work with the classroom teacher in either Title I or reading, and we say, okay, is there extra time that can be put into the student during the school day? So when they're in their ELA block, not being pulled out, but we can push into the class and be like, all right, I'm going to work with this student, we've got it identified, and we can say, let's try something a little bit more intense.
Thanks.
And one thing I want to share from Jill's goals is that all the data that they're gathering for the SST meeting will eventually be in one database, so that,
Oh, really?
that everything can be tracked much easier. So that's one of Jill's goals, which I'm really supportive of.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I guess that's sort of what I was getting at. Is like, is this a really super formal thing where you can track progress? Because obviously it's a great. I mean, it's a great thing. I think it's wonderful. But like making sure that already stretched teachers aren't being asked to do it. Yeah.
So it's regulatory. It is a requirement to have a district curriculum accommodation plan. It is a requirement to have support teams meet and discuss the progress of students, especially students who are struggling. And we, in this state, are supposed to be looking at students who are struggling, whether it be through social emotional struggles, behavioral struggles, or academic struggles. Any one of those three things can lead a student to be recommended to the support team. And in each school must have a support team, and they must provide interventions for students who are struggling, and they must manage them.
Okay.
Required.
I've just never heard of it before, so I'm really super curious about it. And how it's tracked, because like if you don't keep track, how do you know what's, you know?
Yeah, so there's goal setting that's done in the meetings.
It's
And
kind
then
of
they
like a mini
remeet
IEP,
after
right?
like 6 to 8 weeks to see if those goals have been met.
Well, then my other question is, are you doing it mostly for academic or are you using it for behavioral
Whatever.
intervention?
So
And how do
that's-
you measure that
In terms of,
behavior? Like if someone's struggling with behavior or something?
well, then we invite those people, so we have a form, and then when it says if it's academic, if it's behavioral, if it's social, if it's attendance, like it could be literally anything. Then we invite the necessary people, so it's behavioral, then we invite our behaviorist and our behavior adjustment counselor, and then
Okay.
those are the people at the table, and we go like, all right, what's the problem? And then we sit and we discuss, what have you tried? Lots of times it's like classroom interventions or something like that, but then we go to the next step and saying like, maybe our behaviorists can come in and help us out with doing some observations and making suggestions on things that we can try. Maybe there's, a individual behavior chart that you could make.
All right,
or-
yeah, like stars.
But then again, like anything, we track it, we monitor it. If it's not progressing, then we kind of bring it back to the table.
Should a parent request their child? Okay, because how long has this been going on? Sorry, I don't know.
It's been going on since I've been here.
Really?
Yep.
Never
I
heard
think they used to call it child study, and then it's kind of morphed. Like,
Okay.
it used to be the adjustment counselor, I think, used to be, right now. Sorry.
Yeah,
Right?
I think, yeah.
I think the adjustment counselor used to do it when I first started, and then it's kind of morphed, and then Brian and I took it over, and it's getting better each year. I mean, it's not a perfect system, but we want our teachers to have the supports, and obviously, we want our students to be able to, get everything that they need.
Well, no, it's great. I thank you for telling me more about it.
The next one is just kind of data meetings, K to 6. Brian and I really were pushing people to focus on the data as much as possible and really understand the MCAS data, but also we have our own data here in the building. We have a STAR benchmarking in grades 2 through 6 in both ELA and math. Then we also have DIBELS data in K1 and 2. Thanks, Brian. So we're just using that data much more frequently with staff and just trying to make sure we're identifying those students that need the supports, and we're giving everything that they can so that we're not just looking at the student there, but we're looking at the numbers as well and how we can move students along. And in those data meetings, like I said, with Brian and I, we do one-on-one meetings with staff, but then we also do meetings with our reading, title, and math interventions as well. As they're looking at those, we try and, when we pull them into the picture, we're targeting areas, grade levels, students, classrooms, where we can make sure that we're getting the supports in there. So that's how we work with our reading and math people to get into the places where they really need. And they're not just filling their schedules, but they're actually identifying the students that need those interventions. Compliant also with early literacy screening regulations and now new dyslexia guidelines that are out, actually, right? Hear more.
Right, like there's a new regulation this year in 2023 that schools are required to screen students, all students K-3 with a DESE-approved literacy screener. So we've chosen DIBELS, and that's why Ken and I were going back and forth about which grades are covered. So all students are assessed with a consistent literacy assessment to ensure that they're on track. And if any student were to score in the bottom 25% national, where required to communicate with the family about steps that we'll take to ensure that we're intervening, much in the same way that Kane talked about. ST would be used as part of that intervention group. So this year, families with students in those grade spans have already received a notification that says, we're complying, we're screening, and if your child is in that 25%, we will communicate with you. And then we've done our screening in the past 2 weeks at those grade levels, actually all grade levels, but if once the data is all analyzed, we will communicate with those families in accordance with the new 2023 regulation. So the regulation is at least twice a year, but we benchmarked 4 times, and if a student falls in that band, we'll communicate each time is our plan as outlined in that communication sent in, I think mid-September.
And the last one there is just the enhanced co-teaching and intervention model to provide supports in the classroom. Co-teaching is when we have a regular ed classroom and a regular ed classroom teacher and a support teacher, like whether it be a special ed teacher or reading or math teacher. So we're encouraging a push-in model as much as possible whenever we can. So with our intervention, so we were strategic in where we were placing students so that our interventionists and our special educators that can be strategically placed in those rooms where they can have more opportunities for co-teaching. Okay.
How many special ed teachers do you have?
Right now we have 5 special ed teachers. And there's one person that does K1, there's one person that does 2 and 4, there's one at grade 3, one at grade 5, and one at grade 6. That doesn't include the 2 DLC programs that we have as well. So there's one DLC teacher in each of those 2 programs.
So are you moving more towards the special ed teachers being co-teachers rather than pulling kids from the room?
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yes. And same thing with our reading and math interventionists, like not pulling, and we want them in the classrooms as much as possible. It's just, that's the best environment that they need to be in. It's just sometimes schedules, and some other logistics would, might impede that, but we were careful on how we were placing students, and hopefully we're getting them where they need to. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
I just have it's not even a you question, it's a Desi question, I guess, but do you know when parents will get scores? 2?
Yes, the parents will, we actually received the printed out assessments just last week, those parent score reports, and then we'll share them with families soon through the secure Parent Square Dropbox. So we're just going to line that up with our management information systems, but soon.
A question, I'm not even sure this is the right point to ask it, but at the last meeting, we talked about the the MCAS survey that is given 4th grade or 5th grade for, is it 5th grade, sorry, for social, emotional, yeah. My words are not, they're failing me tonight, but there was a discussion that we had that Halifax was the only school in the district that had opted out of that survey to be given to kids, and that predated several iterations of this board, but that the other districts within Silver Lake were giving that survey to our students. We had something different in place. Is there a possibility of discussing whether that should be revisited, that decision, to be more in line with what the rest of the district is doing? Again, I'm not even sure this is the right point to ask that question, but.
Are you asking?
I guess I'm just asking in general to this body. Yes, like, is this something, yeah.
It wasn't, I didn't make that decision, it was the school
Understood.
committee that determined that we weren't taking it.
Yes, that's my understanding. It was before my time as superintendent.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to add the survey back in, we'd have to probably add it as a agenda item for the future with a discussion and vote. Is that something you'd like to do?
I think it's worth a discussion, you know, and revisiting it. We're in a different place than we were when that decision was made, and if every other school in the district is doing
COVID
it.
and everything.
Pre-COVID, park, all that, like, it's, a lot's changed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Christine? How many more do we get?
Just a moment.
When's your replacement is starting December, so we do have a few more meetings this year.
You get a chance to bond. Yeah, it'll be good.
Are you still in Halifax, so?
I do. I can come visit the
I was gonna
meeting.
say, can you sit in the gallery at like a meeting? That'd be great.
I may have a plan for, working in my own time.
Oh, that's cool.
Volunteering.
Volunteering. Oh.
The financial for tonight is in the electronic folder that's been shared with you. There are not any substantial changes since we met last time, since that was the very end of August that we met. There are a couple of deficits that total $300 between them that will be absorbed in the categories. One noteworthy item is in special education. So if you look on page 2 of that report, special education transportation right now is reflecting a deficit of $27,841. Please do not get alarmed. That does not reflect the use of any circuit breaker. We are now receiving circuit breaker for tuition and transportation. That number is usually out in September. It's not out yet. It has not been calculated. I checked this afternoon before I came to see if there was some late breaking news, but no, it has not been released yet. So that's why I say please don't get along and see what happens when we find out what those numbers are. Because when we budget net of circuit breaker. So certainly the impact of circuit breaker has already been used to reduce the amounts that we budgeted for the school year. So let's see what happens with that. Let's wait to see what happens when that comes out. The only thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the category of out-of-district vocational. I believe we budgeted $156,000 for those 2 areas. $156,500. We have 1 student attending this year. So that would be an area where there will be a surplus. But as of right now, there's 1 student attending the out-of-district placement. And that's it for now. Is there any questions? Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Ryan?
Well, thank you. In addition to some of the information that we presented on MCAS, I just wanted to, last week was the first professional development time since the start of school, so with the early release time, teachers had time to do goal setting for their educator plans. We have an updated educator evaluation system for Halifax and for the district, and Kanan, Lori Heaney worked on that last year, throughout the course of the year, to make sure that we had some clear information to share with staff at the beginning of the year. And on Thursday, we continue to meet as a group to make sure that we're supporting teachers as we implement it. Generally, there's more focus on the goals for staff with professional teacher status, and less on the 4 standards in the DESE teacher rubric. That helps align it with district and school goals. So it seemed like people used the time effectively, and that was we really appreciate that time that educators have to work together. So just wanted to provide an update on our early release last week. And also we're continuing to move forward, like Ms. Berry said, about uploading our assessment systems into our new platform that's called EduClimber. And so to add a little bit more about that, the hope would be that right now, if you want to see MCAS results, you have to go into a state system. If you want to see STAR results, you have to go into a Renaissance platform. DIBELS is its own platform. Grade 3 does both DIBELS and STAR. How do you see both in one place? And the MCAS results. So that's the project that we're undertaking, to try to have that data more accessible by our school leaders, district leaders, and teachers. So that work continues, but that's the hope, because there is so much sort of monitoring of progress throughout the year. So MCAS is sort of one snapshot, and we want to make sure that we can use more real-time information. So that's just an update on those two components.
For the teacher evaluation discussion, and how different is it? I mean, it's most of it comes right from the state, correct? Or is there?
The only, it was reviewed after the committee worked last year. It was reviewed by our district legal counsel for alignment and approved. Generally, the minimum number of observations is one low. The minimum number is one lower, and the primary adjustment I talked about was for staff with professional teacher status. For those developing educators, it's still heavily focused on both the goals and the 4 key standards in the state. There's less customization at the developing teacher status level.
And Lori, being that she's the president of the teachers union?
That's correct. I believe that the educator evaluation committee has to be comprised of both members of the associations and of district leadership or school leadership as evaluators. So we think we're trying to comply with that, so all stakeholders have a part in that process.
And that's all the same that's in their contract here? Everything,
That's
what's in their contract, sorry?
That is correct. Thank you. The updated educator evaluation system is entirely reflected in the most recent contract.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for giving them time to get their goals set as well. I'm sure that was appreciated by them.
Jill? No, I meant for Ryan, sorry. Next agenda item.
Okay, so as Lauren mentioned, I presented my goals on September 28th, I believe it was, to the Administrative Committee. Those goals are in your packet tonight if you would like to take a look at them. They are aligned with the strategy of district improvement, so there's complete alignment between the two. I also wanted to mention that we have announced a new pre-K principal for our Silver Lake pre-K program, Valerie Johnson. In addition, Union 31 met on September 26th and approved the contract for Sarah Hickey as our new business director. And as we said, we're very sad that Christine is retiring, but it is well deserved, and she has just been a wonderful person to work with over these years, and we hope that she'll continue to remain and come back and visit us. In terms of the budget timeline, you have that in your packet. We are well underway. In terms of the Kingston Budget Advisory Committee, we're talking with Kingston about a new potential bylaw. We have been in communication with Kingston. We have already put out a request to the building principals, our special education director, our director of facilities, our director of technology, and our curriculum coordinator. And we're going to be meeting with them in October. And then they are going to have a joint presentation for you on November 16th. In addition, the principals are working with their grade level teams. This is the part of the year where they already begin starting to compile their budgets. They will work with the special education director. They will also work with the facilities director for capital planning to have those presentations ready for you as early as January. But the joint meeting will focus on special education. It will focus on curriculum, and it will focus on technology as we have done in the past, rather than doing the same presentation at each school committee meeting, because they're pretty lengthy presentations. The rest of the budget cycle remains the same, where we begin our initial presentations are in January. In February, we hold our budget hearings. And in March, the school committee makes a decision about the budget, and then sent to the towns. In April, May, the voting on the school budget occurs. So that is relatively unchanged.
If, as a school committee, before the budget's made and we want considerations to be made, when will we bring that up?
So part of your goals, and that's something that I'm asking for you tonight to consider, is what are your budgetary goals for the upcoming school year? At this point, we need your input, right? So to the greatest extent possible, if something is a priority for you, please let us know. In the past, what we have tended to do is, by the request of some towns, it varies from year to year. In the last few years that I have been here, generally we've been asked to provide a level services budget, not level funded.
Right.
Level services means if we were to continue all the programs as they currently exist, what would that cost? And then anything additional we present to you as additional items that are not currently in the budget, so the committee can determine whether or not they feel those items should or should not be added to the budget.
Will we send that to you and Kane? Any
You could.
idea? What's the best way to communicate with them?
I think ultimately the best way to communicate is, yes, to let me, or for, if it's a school-related expense, to let me and Kane know. I should be on that correspondence to Kane. Christine should also be aware of any particular concerns. But again, it may be part of your budget, it may be part of your goals discussion.
Okay.
Because that is a big responsibility of the school committee, is the budget itself.
Jill, one of your goals was to have a copy machine where teachers or administrators can put in a code so that there's confidentiality kept. Do we already have that in this school, or do we need to build that into our capital budget?
We're in the process of already going there. Now, again, the codes and making sure that there are enough access points, we're going to work through that this year, but it's already underway. And again, the hope is to rely less on desktop printers because they're more expensive. We're not able to find replacement parts. We're not able to maintain them. It's just, in general, a much more expensive way to go about copying things. Will they still exist in some capacity? At least for the short term, until they become obsolete. And in some areas, the concern about confidentiality is mitigated because it doesn't print until you put your code in. So once that's fully up and functioning in all of our schools, that becomes a non-issue. And it's a much less expensive way to print. The toner, the maintenance of the machines is really expensive.
How often are teachers printing up confidential information? Is it more of a main office issue, or?
Someone like a school adjustment counselor may have a need to print something, a special education teacher, an IEP, confidential, right?
It really could be anyone. I mean, a classroom teacher could print out an email from a parent and then run over to the copier or printer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
We really don't have classroom printers. I mean, there might be a few, but it might be with our school psychologists or something like that. But we haven't had classroom printers for quite some time.
So also in your packet, you'll find a number of different charts. The first one is homeschool enrollment overall in all of our K through 6 is down from last year with 40 homeschool students down to 35. In Halifax, it was 13 students last year homeschooled, but down to 11. In terms of homeschool enrollment, grades 7 through 12, in Halifax, by 2 students, it was 9, it's down to 2. In your packet, you'll also see the October 1st enrollments. You'll see that Halifax, October 1st, is at 547. The number of Halifax students in the middle school is at 186. And the number of Halifax students at the high school are 320, for a total of 1,053 Halifax students attending our schools, K through 12 plus.
Does that include pre-K?
It does not include our pre-K numbers here, not on this chart.
Okay.
And then, in terms of the October 1st enrollments and their impact on the assessment percentages, Halifax has gone up from 30.8% from last year to 32.2%. It's increased. In the Silver Lake assessment percentages, and in terms of shared cost percentages, it has gone down. It was 29.8%, it's gone down to 28.5%. Also in your packet, you'll see the Halifax, Kingston, Clinton student enrollment for tracking back since 2013. Halifax is trending up by 10 students since last year at 251. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong school. It's trending down. It was at 564 last year. It's trending down to 547. It's down quite a bit from 2013. Probably at its greatest, let's see, 608 was in 2019, pre-pandemic. So that's the trend there. In terms of 7 through 12, the number of students in grades 7 through 12, as you would imagine, actually went up. It's gone from 467 to 501. So that bubble has gone up too.
The other 3 years, we got the COVID babies come out.
So then, I think the last item that I have tonight is just the announcement that Silver Lake Regional School District did vote to present the warrant article to the 3 towns in the fall meeting, and that is to update the regional agreement, which is the big change there is to officially recognize pre-K as part of Silver Lake. So it will now be pre-K and 7 through 12, which is how it had been operating, but it wasn't how it was legally identified. So that will be codified in the new regional agreement if the towns approve it. And in addition, there's a number of changes that all are regulatory and housekeeping kinds of things that needed to be addressed because the regional agreement had not been reviewed in such a long time. But the big change is the addition of pre-K officially to the Silver Lake region.
Can I say something? I feel like as members of the school committee, something that we need to help people in the town understand is if we don't pass the new regional agreement as written, it will mean that we will have to provide all the services that are being provided by the pre-K, and it will come to great expense to the town. So just in case there's information out there, people are like, well, what does this mean? We're like, well, we're just making official what's already in place. We're, having our agreement match what we're actually doing. And so, if anything, like just make sure that, and like having it on public record that that's what's happening. It's not anything but that. Like we're not trying, it's not anything sneaky or, it's just that we have to. What?
It's time, it's the 11th hour, it needs to be done correctly.
Right, it needs to be done correctly. DESI required it. So if we don't pass this agreement at town meeting, the school will cost us even more money and we'll end up losing out in other areas because we have to, the services are very important and needed, but we have a great way of it. And actually, I believe our cost goes down through this agreement a little bit, right? Or
In that sample snapshot.
sample snapshot, okay.
Moment in time.
That's one moment in time.
It's based on the enrollment in the high school
Right.
program, and that does fluctuate. So.
Right, but and obviously you never know, but then, it's just, we would have to invent the entire program or send kids out, which would be more expensive, which would probably be a more likely scenario.
Can I ask a question in terms of if that, if that were to happen, this has an impact on kids in the CTE program that assist in those classrooms, no?
No, that's a separate pre-K program. This is our integrated preschool, which is required by the state and provides services for the towns of Halifax, Kingston, and Clinton.
And it functions in the KES, KIS building?
It's currently housed in the KES.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to share that because, false info gets out there. It's important.
That's it for me.
Okay, Important dates, October 9th is Columbus Day. October 26th is early release for grades K through 6 only at 12:30 p.m. November 7th is an in-service for teachers and there's no school. And November 13th is our next school committee meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion to go into executive session and not return to regular session?
Can I ask,
Yes.
before we do that, can I bring one more item for discussion? It's a small one. But I don't think we have, just going forward, can we add, we add to the agenda a spot for a new business if board members have things that they want to discuss?
We're actually not supposed to have just a blanket new business.
Okay.
That's my understanding, right? You're not supposed to have that. We did, but you're not supposed to.
Okay,
So
so
we
thank
need to
you.
make sure that if you have an agenda item, because then really you could be like, well, this is new business, you know?
Yeah.
That we're treading on.
So it's a question around the Mass Association of School Committees conference that's happening in November. And I'm not sure if our board has ever sent representatives there, but I have an interest in attending. I don't know if other folks on the board have an interest in attending.
I actually did attend my first year, and so we do have a budget for that. You just need to let Jill know
Okay,
that you want to go.
all right.
And anyone else that's interested in going.
I just wanted to mention it here in case it needed to be discussed
Okay,
in
no,
an open
that's
session.
great. Yeah, no,
Thank you.
yeah, just let Clint know.
I will, thank you.
And if anyone else is interested in going, it's really informative. I enjoyed it. I got to do it online. All right.
Sorry, just one other thing about thing too. So for the agenda, I feel like we acknowledge visitors at the beginning, but then I feel like they might have questions after what they've heard. And so therefore we can always go back to any visitors that are there and say, did you have questions about what they experienced? Yeah.
I would recommend referring to the acknowledging visitors policy, which will be reviewed at the next session. So again, I would just want to make sure that you're not in violation of your own
Right.
policy.
We have to make sure we're following the policy.
Right, that's right, but I guess yeah, is it just doesn't make sense, like, you know, to your questions, it's like, well, the meeting hasn't started yet, so maybe they might want to make a statement or ask something at the beginning, and I just feel like sometimes people have a question about what they heard.
That's true. And people can always reach out to us through email.
Or the next meeting, ask you.
Or come to the next meeting, but yeah, I want to make sure we don't violate what our policies actually are. All right, anyone else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session and not return to open session. Executive session, MGL 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss a complaint or charge brought against a public officer, employee, staff employee, or individual. Halifax principal, MGL C30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for contract negotiation, paraprofessionals, MGLC 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, food service workers, and executive session pursuant to MGLC 30AS 21A7 to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, approval of executive session minutes of August 28th, 2023, September 7th, 2023, and September 21st, 2023.
Second. Okay, roll call. Katie?
Yes.
Lori? Karen? Jessica? Lauren, yes. Thank you, everyone.